Hello everyone. In few minutes, Master Louise Fréchette with us from Montreal, Canada. Louise Fréchette started your training in 1976. She was certified bioenergetic therapist in 1982. She was trained by Dennis Hoyer. She has several workshops with with Alexander Lowen and other senior trainers. In 1987, Louise was local trainer, and in 1992, Louise was faculty member. I will send an invite to Louise. Hello, Master Louise. I will send an invite to you now. Very nice. Waiting for you, Master.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Dante.
Welcome.
I'm glad to be with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time, for share your knowledge, your history with bioenergetic analysis with us. I already read a few words about your history, your resume. I wish say thank you for your time, your energy, and I don't know if you wish say something.
I don't know. Are you going to say something about my resume, or you want me to explain it?
Oh, I already told about your a little words only. Maybe it will be very nice if you can share something about your training, about your history with bioenergetic. I think that will be very nice.
Okay, so I will try to present myself in a short way. I started to be trained in bioenergetic back in 1976. So that tells you something about the fact that I am an old lady right now. I've been in bioenergetics for many years. So I started my training in 1976. I was certified as a CBT in 1982 and started to be a bioenergetic analyst here in Montreal in private practice. Then I started to also work as a supervisor and local trainer around 1987. And then I got accepted as a faculty member, international trainer of the IIBA in 1992. And since then, I have been done training in various places, which was such a rich experience for me. So I did train in many provinces in Canada. I did some training in the United States. I trained in France, in Belgium, in Spain, in Russia lately, and also in Argentina for several years, and in Brazil as well. And I also did some training in New Zealand. So I feel very fortunate because I feel deeply connected to the international community of bioenergetic analysis. Plus, I was involved in the organization in various ways. I was part of the executive committee in 1996 to 1998, especially at the time when we transformed the International Institute from an institute that was directed by Lowen from New York to an institution where the directors were elected by the membership, which was very new. And I was involved in many committees, the teaching committee, the faculty committee. So I really feel fortunate to belong to that wonderful community. So I think that's about all that I can say for now.
Well, wow. Thank you for your words. I think that we will learn a lot with you now.
I hope so. I don't know. I'm always excited to share my reflections and my knowledge, and so I'll be waiting for your question, Dante.
Let's go. So, the first question. What is the specificity of bioenergetic analysis compared to other therapeutic modalities, including other forms of body psychotherapy?
Yes, well, I always felt that the very specificity of bioenergetic analysis was related to our very particular way of doing character analysis and working with character structure. I don't know that I know of any other therapeutic approach, including body therapy approach, that have such a comprehensive approach to the existential struggle of a particular person. Now, that's interesting because the concept around character structure was developed by Reich, and particularly with his principle of functional identity, which was a brilliant concept that said that whatever function of the defensive apparatus on the psychic level, it was reflected also on the somatic organization of the person and the way that person was organized somatically and presented her or himself physically. These tensions and these defensive psychological pattern had the same function to defend against a painful experience. So Reich did really something brilliant when he brought the body into the therapeutic room and also used it as a very precious tool to understand more deeply the person and also to work with that. Now, Lowen developed from Reich's basic principles, and he developed his own kind of psychotherapy, which he named bioenergetic analysis. Now, he really built upon what Reich had developed, and he became more specific. He developed the character types, the 5 character types, and the schizoid, the oral, the psychopath or narcissist, the masochist, and the rigid. So that was an interesting attempt as helping us understand that the somatic organization and the psychological organization of a person would be different depending on what happened in their lives as they were going through different developmental stages. So if a little infant, right from the start of their lives, were rejected by their parents or by their mother, then the way they would organize somatically and psychologically would be very different from when they would develop if they encountered difficult experiences only when they reach the Oedipal stage, for instance. So it was interesting to have these character types. However, when I was trained around the years of 1970s and the years of the 70s and beginning of the 80s, unfortunately, the character types were often used to label people. And we would participate actively in that. I remember that as a student, during my own training in the late 70s, we would all want to have our label. What am I? Am I a schizoid? Am I a masochist? And we would attach a certain value on character structure. For instance, I remember thinking, oh, the poor schizoid, they're the most damaged, and the rigids were the luckier ones because they were supposed to be more evolved. Well, that doesn't work like this. I myself was labeled a masochist. And of course, it fits with some of my own life experiences, but it's much more complex than that, because later in life, I realized that under the masochist layer, there was something pretty much borderline in myself. So now we have learned that actually we're not cases like we find in books. So we are much more complex. And I remember Lowen having said, I regret so much to have done the character types because people are using it to label their patients, and it's not what they should do. They should use it or try to rather, what he would say, see the person. So, okay, so that would be my answer to that first question. But character analysis is the specificity of bioenergetic analysis, but it has to be done in a way in which we pay attention to the unicity of the person and to the unicity of their existential struggle. And this is what Lowen wanted us to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. Unfortunately, I think that the most of the bioenergetic students pass to this kind of vision of the characters.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, actually, us trainers made sure that when we would teach the various character issues or character types or character organization, we made sure that it's not used to label. It's used to try to gain a deeper understanding of some very particular core issues.
Perfect. Let's go to the second question.
Yeah.
How was bioenergetic analysis evolved since the early days when Lowen formulated his character types chart?
Yes, so the first thing is what I just said, is that we have evolved in a way in which we use character analysis as a way to see the person, to understand the person, and try to deepen our understanding of what is the core issue with that person. Now, what has also evolved is that since Lowen developed the 5 character types, we have deepened our understanding of the issues of each character types. And also we added one, I wouldn't say one more character types, but Lowen never spoke very extensively about the borderline. And we know how many clients now we have who are struggling with borderline issues. So since the beginning of bioenergetic, I think we have expanded a lot our own understanding about the borderline issues and all the other issues of the various character structure. Now, another thing that I think that evolved is that in my time at the beginning, the character structure was seen as something that was bad. We had to not break the character structure, but we had to, well, with Lowen's style of work, he would very rapidly see what the nucleus was, and he would go directly for the nucleus, and the character structure was very quickly crumble when he would work with a person. And so the emphasis was more put on, well, the character structure is something that has to be worked with, but in a way we have to go to the center. And sometimes it was very quick, and the person, it was not easy for the person to recuperate when there was a lot of confrontation. Now, I think nowadays we tend to put more emphasis on what are the resources of the character structure. And we are coming to see and understand more how the character structure is, I would say, a marvel in the developmental history of a person, how creative the character structure was to help a person survive various painful or threatening situations in their lives. So now we're seeing more the positive aspect of the character structure. And I think we tend to honor more the process by which we help a person soften their character structure to be able to get to the nucleus inside of themselves. Now, another thing that has evolved is also that I remember in the early time, I mean, when I was training in the 70s and even the beginning of the 80s, and it was also Lowen's model. Lowen was exceptional in his capacity to look at a person and to deeply understand what their core issue were. And he would go for it. He always said, I don't want to lose time. I want to help that person be more vibrant, be more alive. And so I will help them get to their core issues quickly. And he worked more in a model in which he was somehow the expert. He knew what was the problem. He knew how to get there. He knew how to get the person to break down and cry and sob. And it was very powerful, and he did help. I seen him do very deep work with people, and I was really impressed by that, and I admired that. And it was a really gift that he had. But now, as bioenergetic evolved in the 80s, there was more emphasis put on the importance of the relationship. Mm-hmm. And less on the therapist became less of the expert who was able to read the body and know what the problem was and knew how to get there. And it evolved more into how can we establish the relationship so that the patients become more a partner in that work. And so the relational aspect of the therapy became more important. In those times, there were the people from the West Coast of the United States, and I'm thinking about Robert Hilton and other senior trainers who really helped put an emphasis on, okay, it's important not to only be the expert. We're not the expert here, but the relational aspect has to be also emphasized. How we relate to the person, how we include the person in their own process. Okay, I think that's the emphasis, the changes that I've seen over the years. And I will talk more about also, I think one of the major change has been also to stress the emphasis of the early issues and how to work with the early issues in a different way. So that bioenergetic was very cathartic in the beginning with big explosion of emotions. And then we gradually learned to modulate and make space for interventions that were softer and that also took into consideration early issues and more fragile structures that had to do the work more progressively.
Cool, thank you. Is a good upgrade. In this time that our organization started to work with Winnicott theories?
Well, actually, yes, there were. I remember one of my mentors and dear colleague who is David Campbell. He was a Scottish trainer. He passed away, unfortunately. He had studied with Winnicott, and he also, along with those West Coast trainers, he also in his teaching was emphasizing an approach centered on being able to modulate and pay attention to the early issues and the fragility of the people.
Very nice.
But we're going to talk about this, I think, how we integrated some other.
Wow. So the next question.
Yes.
Perfect. What did bioenergetic analysis borrow from other perspectives and from the recent developments in psychology? That's right?
Yes, that's it. Well, originally, based on Reich's work and also how Lowen developed the bioenergetic analysis approach, it was more centered on the psychosexual development. So the emphasis was put on how can we help the patient soften their characterological defenses, both on the somatic level and psychological level, so that they can attain a fuller sexual life and arrive at a developmental place in their lives with sexual primacy. Now, and that remains, and that is very important too. But what we gained with the new findings in the psychological movement, the larger psychological movement, was that we were inspired by the work of Bowlby around attachment theory, by the work of Daniel Stern, who put the emphasis on the attunement, the importance of attunement in early development. Alan Shore, who put the emphasis on affect regulation. And I would add also Heinz Kohut, who developed a very original theory around the fact that there were two vectors of development. One was the object relation development, my relationship to the other, the oral, anal, Oedipical phase of development, but he also emphasized another vector of development, which was the narcissistic development, the relationship to oneself, and how can I get mirrored by my parents and develop a sense of myself as a worthy person. So he discussed a lot about healthy narcissism as opposed to various type of problems around narcissism. So all these authors really brought into perspective particularly how important the early development was. So instead of putting the emphasis only on the psychosexual development and having a focus on attaining sexual maturity and potency, which remains a very important objective, but then we devoted much more attention now to also what was happening on the development of the self, the sense of self, the type of early attachment we develop, and also the kind of relationship to our own narcissism. So all these findings found their ways into our teachings in bioenergetic analysis. So in the curriculum that we now teach, we integrate those elements and those concepts, and we put much more emphasis now on what's happening in these early issues and what's happening in the very early developmental stages. Now, the other thing that was also developed is a deeper understanding of the various modalities of the therapeutic relationship. Now, these late years, there is also a lot of discussions around the various modalities of relationship during a therapeutic session and over a therapeutic process. And we are developing a better understanding, for instance, between what is an analytical relationship to analyze the defenses and to be able to help a person analyze and understand their own defensive organization. We also have a better understanding of the transferential relationship, how we can understand and work with the transference of the patient and also our own countertransference. And this is also an important part of the curriculum when we teach bioenergetic analysis. And a new type of relationship, which is being called the intersubjective relationship. And in the intersubjective relationship, it's very delicate because the therapist in that kind of relationship would share their own experience in the relationship with the client. It's a person-to-person relationship. Now, the difference would be like, for example, in an analytical relationship, I would talk in terms of you. This is what I see you doing. This is my understanding of your type of functioning. And in an intersubjective relationship, I would share with the patient, oh, this is how I feel when you say that. Oh, I can feel the sadness as you are sharing this with me. And this is a very important type of relationship, especially with people who have preverbal traumatic or micro traumas in their history, because they need to have that resonance. They need to have that response, emotional response to what they are sharing, because this is precisely what they never got. And so this is why now we're getting to understand better these various levels of therapeutic relationship and understand how to modulate them to address very specific kind of wounds or issues or trauma the person may have experienced. So we're much more, we know much more about how to approach trauma than what was the case at the origin of bioenergetic analysis.
Very nice upgrades necessary. And talk about upgrades. What do you think about what did bioenergetic analysis integrate from neuroscience?
Now, this is another very interesting dimension or knowledge, a body of knowledge that we've learned to integrate. We've been inspired, for instance, by what's been written about the mirror neurons, and that really has helped us understand much more about how empathy works with our patients. And then we also we were also inspired by the work of Bessel van der Kolk and Stephen Porges. Yes?
Sorry, if you feel comfortable, I was thinking if you can talk a little bit more about mirror neurons. A few words, maybe a few words.
Well, I cannot say more. I know that the person who originally wrote about this is a person named Giacomo Rizzolatti. So he was, I think, one of the first ones to understand this. And the mirror neurons is what helps us really feel from the inside what a person may be experiencing. So empathy is different from sympathy. In sympathy, if a person is sad, well, I can become very sad as the person, but it doesn't help the person. With the mirror neurons and with empathy, what will happen is that I can see that my patient is sad, but what will happen is that I will be able to intuit from the inside how it is to experience such a sadness. And I will be able to become what I call an emotional echo to that person. And this is a concept I like to teach about, the emotional echo. And it's also a type of intervention that is very different from analysis. In analysis, I would say, this is how I understand your functioning. When I'm working with the emotional echo, it's a bit like what I was explaining with the intersubjective relationship. Is, for instance, I found out that was very helpful for me when I had patients who had severe traumas and who were in a state where they had no words to express what was happening to them. They would be sitting on the facing me, and I would ask them, now, can you tell me what is going on for you? And they would be in touch with such primitive states inside themselves that sometimes they would look at me and say, I have no words. And the only thing I could do then was to try to share with them how I resonated with what I saw. And I would say something like, when I see your facial expression, when I see how you are in your body, what I imagine is that maybe you, inside of you, there is a big storm and you don't know where you are. And I would try to describe what I would intuit. And sometimes they would just say, they would just indicate yes, doing so. Other times they would say, no, this is not exactly. It's more like this. And just my resonance would help them put some words, even if I was not on the dot. When they would say it's not exactly like this, it's more like this, it would help them shape a bit more their experience. And this is what I call emotional resonance. And I think that has to do with the mirror neurons.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that I was feel emotional resonance now.
Well, I'm glad you do. Yeah, I think it's nice to feel the connection, even though you are in Brazil and I'm in Canada.
Yeah, and we our audience, the people from Argentina, Finapla, a lot of people looking us. But
yes.
Keep talking, please.
Yes, please, all of you that I know, I'm giving you a big hug. Thank you for being there, by the way. I wanted to ask to add something about the neuroscience aspect, because I also wanted to talk about the contribution of Bessel van der Kolk and Stephen Porges, because they helped us learn so much more about the parasympathetic system. And I want to salute also the work of David Berceli, who developed the TRE approach to trauma, and who was inspired by those authors. And David had been trained in bioenergetic also. And the contributions of these authors helped us understand the functioning of the parasympathetic system, which was very enlightening, because when I used to teach the Reichian concept of sympathetic and parasympathetic system, I would always explain that the sympathetic system is the fight or flight system that activates us when we feel threatened. And the parasympathetic system was the system where that would help us relax and feel that we were in an expansive state and so forth. Now, what van der Kolk and Porges helped us understand is that in the parasympathetic system, there is the ventral and the dorsal parasympathetic system. And the ventral parasympathetic system is the one that indeed helps us relax, open up, feel secure, confident, open to others. But that other dimension, which is the dorsal parasympathetic, is the system that would activate a traumatic response and would push up to a place where there would be emotional flooding, dissociation, freezing reactions. So their findings really helped us see what was happening with our clients when the various systems were activated. And we could understand better how to work with trauma when these traumatic responses were triggered. What to do when a person gets emotionally flooded, dissociates, or freezes. And we have learned to help them come to a place where they could self-regulate, or we would also learn how to help them stay in the range of a window of tolerance where their emotional and somatic response wouldn't be too intense for them, so they would get into these places of trauma, to re-traumatization. So that helped us very much. That helped us a lot to learn to work with our patients who are struggling with trauma. And we learned to pay much more attention to self-regulation and see how to work. And this is one of the changes of bioenergetics. In the beginning, bioenergetics was seen as the therapy where you really had cathartic responses. You would hit with the racket, you would scream, you would kick. And of course, I think it's important to keep these tools, because depending on the situation, on the issue, people need to be able to have these cathartic discharges. But we have learned that we cannot work like that with all our patients, that we need to expand our tools so that we can work in a more subtle way and help people who have traumatic issues remain in that window of tolerance and capacity for self-regulation. And the teachings or the theories that were developed by van der Kolk and Porges, and also by other therapists who are working with trauma. I'm thinking about Peter Levine, Pat Ogden, Also, Daniel Siegel, who is working a lot with the mindful brain, the mindful therapist. All these authors have helped us deepen our understanding of the traumatic issues and how to work with them. Keeping in touch with our own tools. We're still using our tools, but we're modulating how we can use them depending on the issues.
Perfect.
Ooh.
Wow.
I suppose
And
I hope I'm clear.
yes, very clear. And talking about this, how can the concept of character analysis continue to be relevant in the practice of bioenergetic analysis as of today, given the fact that bioenergetic analysis has been integrating more of the recent developments in the field of psychology?
Well, I think it is still very relevant, the concept of character structure, because we have deepened our understanding of the various core issues related to various character types. We have learned that there is not just one character type. I was giving the example of myself with the masochist layer and finding out later on that I had borderline issues as well. So it's important to keep that character analysis concept and that approach of to try to see the person. And the way I simplify that for my students, instead of insisting too much on the character structures, the character types, which I explain, of course, I tell them, when you look at the patients, what you're trying to do is to understand the very specific existential struggle of that person. And the way to do that is to ask yourself two questions. And these are simple questions. Ask yourself, against what kind of emotion or emotional experience is this person struggling against? That is the wound, the deeper wound. That's the first question. Second question is, how is that person defending herself against that painful experience? And that is the character structure.
How is the second question?
How does that person defend against that wound, against that painful experience?
Okay.
So you have, at the core, you have the wounded self, the part that where I experienced traumatic experiences or painful or threatening experiences, and I learned to defend myself to survive. So against what kind of experience? Is it a very primitive experience? Is it an experience that arose later in my developmental process or the patient's developmental process? And so I have to try to understand that, and then asking, how is that person defending herself against that in the way she behaves in the office, in what I notice in the body. Now, what's interesting also, and what I want to emphasize, is the importance of associating the person to that process. So, body reading to understand the character structure. In doing body reading, I'm not the expert who sees everything, who understands everything, because oftentimes, even after 40 some years of practice, some patients I don't quite understand what they're about, you know?
Yeah.
So what's important is to associate that person, to work as a team. So what happens is, when I would be doing a body reading, and I would see, oh, that person has that stance like a very heroic soldier to have to move on through life, whatever happens. So I would share with them that impression they give me. Oh, for me, you look like a soldier and you have no choice but going on and you cannot let down. Does that resonate with you? And so there I would share my perception, like a piece of puzzle I would give them, or a ball I would I would
A piece of poison.
puzzle. A puzzle.
Puzzle.
Yeah, not
Quebra-cabeça em
poison. No,
português.
no, no,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
poison.
sorry.
No, a puzzle.
Puzzle.
Rompecabezas.
Quebra-cabeça em português.
Quebra-cabeça. And or a ball I would send to them. And then they catch the ball and they say, well, yes, that resonates with me. It's like I never had the permission to let down. I always had to be the strong one. So that is an example. Or they would say, well, it's a little bit like this, but not exactly. And I would also share with them, oh, this is what I see also. I see like you're not really breathing, or it looks as though your arms are not really connected to your body. Do you feel that? Do you sense that? And then the client can respond. And if they say no, then I stay with two possibilities. I may be the one who's not understanding them. I may be wrong. The other possibility could be, well, maybe they cannot allow themselves to be aware of that right now. So I just keep them behind, and I will work with what the person acknowledges, what they recognize. Because, and this is another very important development in bioenergetic analysis, and something that we teach very much these last years and since many years, we teach the importance of attunement. And attunement is the capacity to be on the same wavelength as the patient, so that they feel connected to us. And if I go too quick, and if I go with my idea of what is the character structure and I want to bring them there, I'm not with the person. I'm trying to bring them somewhere. And this is not what we should be doing. We should be with the person, trying to be with them where they are and helping them deepen their understanding of who they are. So when I do body work with a person, I will propose an exercise, and so they will experiment it. And if they don't feel it fits them, I say, okay, let's find something else. But I will also work with the resistance. I may also ask a person, okay, why is it that you don't like that exercise? Why is it that you don't feel it fits you? And at least there will be a sense of, okay, no, I don't like that. For example, hitting with the tennis racket. I remember a patient who would told me, she came from a country where there had been war when she was a child. And she said, no, I don't want to be violent. I can't do that because it's like being violent, and I don't want to be like that. So we can work with that, and I will try to find another way of working with something a bit similar. Like in that case, for instance, the person would not want, working with the racket didn't fit her experience. But I had her throw a cushion in a motion that is very similar to the movement of hitting with the racket. And that made sense for her. There she could really let herself get into the more aggressive stance, and that was meaningful for that person. So, and this is what I wanted to explain about the attunement. How can I just stay on the same wavelength as a person? And sometimes wanting to bring them somewhere doesn't help. It's just being with them and trying to move from that place together.
Perfect. In the same wave. Very nice.
Okay.
So we have 10 minutes, and I think it's the time to looking forward, looking to the future. So how do you see the future of bioenergetic analysis?
Well, I don't know if I have that much to say, but first, I would say that looking from the past, looking from how we have adapted bioenergetics and integrated the contribution of other currents of psychological discoveries. I think we've done a very good job of trying to integrate the best of what other authors, other approaches could offer, and trying to integrate that with the basic the basis of bioenergetic analysis, which is still, for me, character structure. The understanding character structure is, which means for me, the understanding of a deep existential struggle of the person and how she struggles with that. My good friend and colleague Gita Nella has done a great job of trying to write about the theoretical and clinical integration of these new concepts with the basics of bioenergetic analysis, and other colleagues that I know also in Europe are doing a great job. And we are all trying, I think, all of us from the faculty, the IIBA faculty, the international trainers, we are all integrating that in the teachings that we do. And because of that capacity to adapt or to integrate what's the best of the new tendencies in psychology, that gives me a lot of hope for how we will continue to develop. Because I think that we are not ossified. I mean, we're not just clinging to our theoretical construct. We're really trying to stay alive and evolve and remain open to what we can learn from other authors, other approaches, and integrate that. So in the future, I think we will continue to be open to integrating whatever new concepts or clinical practices that can help us enrich our approach. Now, what I also see is how bioenergetic analysis could expand beyond just the psychotherapeutic one person-to-person setting. I think bioenergetic analysis can have so many applications to the well-being of people. And I'm thinking in particular of how you Brazilians have a talent and also the stamina and the courage and the energy to try to expand bioenergetic analysis beyond just that setting. I'm thinking of the social clinics. Of course, it's still a therapeutic setting, but it's like I can see how in various places there is that desire to try to apply bioenergetic analysis principle and practices to other settings. I know it's not just only in Brazil. I think there are many good, many good. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. I'm going to ignore it. um, in many other places in the world, in Europe, in various places, there is that intention or desire to adapt bioenergetic analysis to other settings, because we have students who are, for example, educators, or they're working in other fields like osteopath and other kind of professional other kinds of professional settings where they can really apply some of the principles of bioenergetic analysis. And I think that we will discover more and more how we can apply it to other places, other settings, and hopefully, I remember Virginia Hilton, who was once the president of the IIBA. She used to say that bioenergetic analysis is the best kept secret in the world. Okay.
Very nice. Thank you, Louise. What do you think about movement groups, about exercise classes? Is a way to expand our setting?
I think exercise classes are such a wonderful way of initiating people to the well-being that gives people to practice these exercises.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you, Louise, for your time, for being available. For me, it's not just an interview, was a class. I learned a lot with you. Thank you. I am sure that the guys, that our audience too, and I think that you don't see, but people from Russia, from Spain, from Argentina, from Brazil, all the world say hello to you and send hugs to you.
Well, I send my love to all the people I know who have been present during that interview. I love you so much, people. It's so enriching for me each time I come in contact with you, and I feel so privileged to be part of that community, that loving community, and that authentic community. So it was a pleasure for me to talk with you, Dante. And I want to thank you particularly for the time and effort you put into these interviews, because I can see how you do it with all your heart. So thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Luis. Finapla Finapla said, "Thank you, Luis, for your wisdom and clarity." From Russia, Nadia, thank you from Russia. Well, a lot of people send good vibes to you.
Well,
Angelina from Russia.
I'm certainly sending good vibes to all of them with all my.
And I hope see you in personal to give you a hug after this coronavirus.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. I'm hungry for hugs too.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's hope we can all meet and be able to give hugs to each other in a not too distant future.
Yeah. So thank you a lot, Louise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye guys. Bye. Share this live. Bye. Thank you, Louise.
Bye.